How's it going, everybody? Bryan and Vinny here on the Bryan and Vinny Show. It is May 27, 2018, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. It is Memorial Day weekend here, and so no music, no bumper. I am in Cannon Beach. Vinny is in my house, actually. As creepy as that sounds. He's got the place to himself here today. And we're going to do NWA World Championship Wrestling from almost 30 years ago this week. And then I'll be back home for the normal show on Tuesday. And Vinny, how's life at my house?
Quiet. Cats are here. They're alive. They were very excited when I came in and very disappointed I was not you. Then I came upstairs and watched NWA, and now we are doing a show. That's what's going on here.
So basically they thought that you were going to feed them.
Of course, and they probably still do.
All right, well, let's get going on the show here, and away we go.
NWA World Championship Wrestling, January 9th, 1988. The show opened with last week's angle where Ron Garvin was attacked by Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, and he was saved by Lex Luger. We had Sting and Barry Windham versus Alan Martin and Tommy Angel. Sting, again, did his spot where he lays the guy out and just does a bunch of standing splashes in a row.
Yeah, but he didn't switch sides this time.
Well, he switched sides once. He went from left to right, but then just going back to the left, he went from the right again.
I was exceedingly disappointed.
It's a very... Well, he's got to switch it up so it does not become predictable. His opponents will not be able to... his opponents will be off balance and not knowing what is coming next.
Sure.
Whether it be a splash from this side or a splash from that. Anyway, why has nobody stolen this spot?
Dude, I have no idea. I don't know why he gave up the spot. That's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
Like, it was something that stood out for the guy, and then he just quit doing it.
Can't you just totally see Mojo Rawley doing this?
Yeah.
Splash, stand, splash, stand, splash, stand, splash, stand. Awesome. This went on for a while, and a subtle thing at the end, Barry seemed to have the match won, but instead of hitting his own finish, he whipped the dude into the corner and then tagged Sting in, so Sting could get his Stinger Splash and Scorpion for the win.
The only thing I have to say about this match, besides the very unfortunate fact that Sting stopped doing an actual cool spot that he did when he was very young, I'm so into the jobbers here on the show, except for Dick Murdoch, who's a hero, and a couple of other guys. But as many people who have listened to the Sunday show for years are well aware, Tommy Angel fucking sucks. I mean, a lot of these jobbers are terrible, but Tommy Angel in particular is just, he's so bad. He was fine in this match. And keep in mind that one of the guys in there was a very, very green Sting. So I guess the moral of the story is, even if you completely fucking suck, if you just keep trying, you can become mildly acceptable.
You can reach competence.
Yeah.
Aim, not for the skies, but for the higher points of the hills.
Well, it's like, if I ever went on tour and gave I'm going to give everybody some advice on how to improve your lot in life. I'm not going to go out there and say, if you try hard, you can accomplish anything. That's bullshit. It's more along the lines of, if you totally suck, but you don't give up and you try really hard, someday you could be average. That's the lesson we've got here from Tommy Angel.
Sweet.
Sure.
And then the winner's cut a promo where Barry it was not a bad promo on Wyndham's part, but he's a normal human. We're going to win the World Tag Team titles, he says. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, you should take notice.
He also said, Sting and I have been doing a lot of things together lately. I was like, oh yeah?
He did say that.
What's that mean?
So they're getting better. But then they go to Sting, who just a fountain of charisma, and I mean that in a non-ironic way. We want to be the best, so we want to beat the best. I'm warning you, Four Horsemen, you got to watch out for two guys who are 6'2" and 260 pounds that can move the way we do. He just blows Barry out of the water, and he moves on, and Barry says, oh, by the way, Larry Zbyszko, you will never be Western States champion. I cannot wait till we're watching these shows, and the Western States title has just disappeared. Because as far as I know, nothing ever it's gone by the end of the year. Nothing ever happened with it. It was the UWF secondary title. That promotion is dead. Now Barry still has this belt. It means nothing. Just stop talking about it. I'm just tired of it.
There was also weird the way they shot it where Sting, I guess they must have had Sting stand behind Barry because Barry towered over Sting. Like, Sting looked like he was maybe 5'10" here in this, but I know he's not 5'10", But it's kind of weird that, you got 2 stars, but you don't really position them right, and one guy looks really short even though he's not. A little bizarre.
Barry is huge on these shows. I don't know if he had lifts or if he had actual cowboy boots with a big giant heel at the back. But he's a guy who's like 6'6" in real life who looks about 6'10".
Well, maybe he is 6'6" in real life. I don't know, because Sting certainly didn't look...
I'm pretty sure Barry is like 6'5", 6'6".
He's very tall.
Yeah, he's legit taller than Sting, but you are right in that he dwarfed him here. Midnight Express versus Lee Peak and Mac MacGyver.
God, you started exactly like I did with a chuckle.
Well, there's so much to talk about here. Mostly because of Jim Cornette.
Well, let's start with Mac MacGyver then first, because that Jim Cornette comes later. They're coming down to the ring. And Mac MacGyver is just your classic fucking terrible jobber. And unlike Tommy Angel, he's not getting better. And he comes out and he's just a square-headed, pale-ass, geeky-looking geek. His head is so square, which was ironic because I'm typing about how square his head is, and then later Jim Cornette just erupts on him about his haircut.
I was the same thing. I'm like, look at this guy's haircut, I thought. And 2 minutes go by, and Cornette said like the exact same words I did. Look at his haircut.
That's right. So he gets in the ring, and he's a jobber, as is Lee Peak. But this week, Mac MacGyver's decided, I'm going to wear a fucking leather jacket.
Uh-huh.
He's out there in this fucking leather jacket. Just the biggest geek who's decided that if he wears a leather jacket, he's going to be a little bit bigger deal. He's not. He was just fucking terrible in this match. It took 5 minutes of the Midnight Express beating these 2 dudes before any of the announcers even started talking about the match.
So let's see. In the match itself, before we get to the Jim Cornette. So one of the geeks, I'm not even sure which geek it was, but one of them like gives Bobby Eaton an arm drag. And Bobby pops up, surprised, but impressed, and he gives the guy the double high five, you know? And
was this early?
This is towards the beginning.
Okay, so that was that would have been Mac MacGyver.
Okay.
Because Lee Peak was... They basically beat up Mac MacGyver for 5 minutes, then they let him tag, and they beat the other guy for 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. So they start to wrestle, and the guy does another arm drag. And Eaton is even more blown away, and he gets up, and he double high-fives him again, and as soon as the guy high-fives him back, Bobby punches him right in the face. Because Bobby Eaton's great. And then they didn't sell anything the rest of the match. It went on for a while. Of course, it's the Midnight Express. It was very good. As squash matches go.
Dude, it was very good, but they were totally fucking around. Like, Stan in particular, he puts Lee Peak in an abdominal stretch, and do you remember that ROH show that we were watching, and who the fuck was it that just gave himself a wedgie?
Oh, Tiki O'Ryan. No, Taven, one of them.
Taven, it was Taven.
Something on that team.
Just because his ass is facing the hard camera, and he's just fucking around, he gives himself a wedgie, and it was go-away heat. In this match, Sweet Stan, because he's a heel... gives the other guy a wedgie.
Yeah.
He gives Lee Peak a wedgie, and just for the hell of it, an abdominal stretch because he's a dick. Then he throws him outside, and for those of you that don't understand wrestling, or you've never been in the ring, or even if you don't have to know any of that, but anyway, when you're going to throw a guy in the ring, you like kind of turn him in a circle and throw him in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He turned this fucking guy around 3 times before he threw him into the ring.
It was like they were square dancing. Just a big old
howl.
do-si-do.
This was incredible.
He finally threw him in, and then he started to dance, just because he's Stan Lane. he likes being Stan Lane. So eventually, the Midnights won with a Gravedigger, which is basically an avalanche spinebuster. So Cornette in the match. The storyline for the Midnights right now, what they got going on is they are already the U.S. Tag Team Champs. And of course, they're not going to be facing the Horsemen for the World Tag Team titles, because they didn't do heel programs very often back then. So instead... Stan Lane is going to beat Nikita Koloff for the TV title, and Bobby's going to beat Dusty Rhodes for the U.S. title. And somewhere in here, he called Nikita Koloff, and I quote, a commie slopehead Russian. Now, I'm assuming that's a racial slur. I don't actually know.
I couldn't quite figure that one out. I presume it had to be, but I
didn't Google it.
I don't understand it.
I don't want that in my search history, but it sounds mean. It sounds very, very mean. So the Midnights win, and then, of course, that just leads to Cornette talking more. He is running down Dusty Rhodes. He says, to make a long story short, he calls Dusty's sister a prostitute and his mother an alcoholic, and then he tells a story about Dusty Rhodes' father. Now, before I begin, Just want to say, send hate mail to James E. Cornette in Louisville, Kentucky, not Bryan and Vinny in Bothell, Washington. So Dusty's father, he explains, once had a successful shoe store. So successful, in fact, he sold that when everyone in Texas thought about black loafers, they thought of Dusty Rhodes' father.
Dude. Mm-hmm. Yep, he had that. He talked about his drunken daddy. He not only called his sister a whore, but also his mother. He threw that in there at the end. His mom said something like, her living room was home for every man. He said something like that.
While your dad was out working in the ditches, every delivery man in town knew the color of your mama's bedroom.
That's right. Yes. So it's both the mother and the sister.
So the mother was a slut. The sister was a whore.
I see. I didn't know there was that big a distinction.
Distinguished. Well, in Cornette's world, apparently there is.
Okay, I got it.
Nikita Koloff versus Jeff Cruz.
Jeff Cruz
for the World Television Championship.
Now, let me explain this here, because they explained it in commentary, and it was funny because it made sense. I'll just explain. They said that Nikita Koloff is a fighting champion, and therefore they said, and this was practically Shivani's exact words, guys like Jeff Cruz are getting title shots who normally would not.
That's what he said.
Okay,
yeah.
So there was it was weird because as a fighting babyface, that's what you want, right? Your babyface will defend the title against anybody, even a guy like Jeff Cruz.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it's Nikita's defending the title against Jeff Cruz?
Yes.
What a fucking coward. Get some competition, buddy.
There's no one more deserving of a title shot this week than Jeff Cruz. Eddie Gilbert won a match last week. He can't have a title shot. Ivan Koloff, the Barbarian, all these guys, and you were fighting Jeff Cruz?
Yeah, let's look at who hasn't appeared on the show yet. The Ball Bearing.
Yeah.
Ron Simmons.
Sure.
Dusty Rhodes is there. Larry Zbyszko is there, who, by the way, wants a belt.
He's on a winning streak.
The Lightning Express are there. The Warlord is there. Luger. We got Dick Murdoch is there, who goddamn needs a title. I mean, the list goes on and on. But instead, he, as a fighting champion, gave a championship match to Jeff Cruz.
Yeah.
Who he killed quickly.
It went 2 minutes. Cruz got more offense in 2 minutes than I would have thought, but it went 2 minutes, and Nikita won with a sickle. And Nikita cuts a promo about Cornette running his mouth, how the Midnight Express want his belt, they want Dusty's belt. He also warns Kevin Sullivan and Mike Rotunda they are not ready for him either. The announcers had a list of men who have been injured in the bunkhouse
stampede. Oh my God, my favorite thing on the show until later.
That's a strong statement, Brian.
Well, when you first said it, it was my favorite thing on the show, but as the words were coming out of my mouth, I remembered what came later.
So Rick Steiner's had surgery because of the bunkhouse stampede. Mighty Wilbur has had surgery because of the bunkhouse stampede. Ricky Morton, they said, is hurt. His knee's all banged up, and Ricky would have more to say about this later. So Wilbur, they explained, had won a spot in the finals, but then had to go in for knee, and he later added hip surgery.
May I begin here?
Yes.
I watched this over and over again. As everybody's well aware, Mighty Wilbur is just the best babyface. He is the best babyface. So in real life, he broke his leg in a bunkhouse stampede. So that part was real. So they go to Mighty Wilbur, and he is laying in a hospital bed. And he's got this big cast on his leg. And he says, well, you fans aren't used to seeing me in a predicament like this. It's on account of the most dangerous match in the world, a bunkhouse stampede. But I knew what I was getting into. I done got thrown over the top, and I blew out my knee and needed hip surgery and knee surgery. It's just one of them unfortunate things. I won enough stampedes to go to the finals on January 24th, but shucks, I can't go now. And I want to wish everybody luck, especially my buddy Dusty Rhodes and Hawk and the Road Warrior. He doesn't even know their names.
I wrote this part down, actually. He said, the Hawk, Animal, and Road Warrior.
Yes.
That's what he said.
So he gets this all out, and then he goes, so yeah, fans probably aren't worse to look. You're used to seeing me in a predicament like this. He's basically starting over again.
Yeah.
And then they cut away.
They did. Almost mid-sentence.
There's no wrap-up. They were just like, okay, the first part was perfect. You ain't going to do it this well again. But now you're just repeating the shit. So we're just going to cut it, and we're going to go back to this. It was so fucking amazing. And now, like, there's, I don't think people understand this, okay? I just want to do a quick aside, all right? So, I am, in fact, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, okay? I watch a lot of Pedro Sauer videos. I watch a lot of Rickson Gracie videos. I watch a lot of Marcelo Garcia videos. I watch a lot of videos with Brazilians who don't really, they're learning to speak English. It's not their first language. Do you understand?
Sure.
So, like, people make fun of me sometimes for, like, the way that I pronounce words. And I'm not doing it on purpose. Do you understand? It's like, I'll just see, a good example. Like, every time Rickson says the word practice, he says practice. And he says it over and over again. Practice, practice. You've got to practice. You've got to practice. Anyway, I actually don't do that one, thank God. But, like, there are things that I say that I can't help myself because I've heard them so many times. And unfortunately, I watch this fucking thing so many times that if I end up saying predicament, which I'm going to try not to do, but if I say it down the road, I don't want some fucker on the board talking about what a fucking idiot I am. This is from Mighty Wilbur. And do not denigrate him or anything he says or the way he talks, because he's a great man.
He sure is a friendly fella. So they cut him off mid-sentence, and they go back to the announcers who start plugging the finals and the $1 million purse at stake in the finals, which will be a steel-caged battle royal. And then, to promote the steel cage battle royal, they show another steel cage battle royal. Or at least part of it. They're in Atlanta. There's, at this point, 4 dudes in a cage, and Bob Eaton shoves 2 of them out the door, and Bob Eaton and Dusty are fighting for a while, and they just say, well, Dusty won. They did not show the finish.
I can only imagine what we missed.
But they promise us Dusty won the wild card here, and so he is the last berth in the Stampede Finals at the Long Island show.
What a shocker.
Now they have big news. They're well aware not everyone can make it to Long Island. Now, I think you could have stopped right there, and their point would have been made. But they're like, 7 o'clock, it's on the East Coast. Not everyone can get there from...
God damn, this East versus West Coast battle continues here.
I guess so,
30 years ago.
But the good news is, Brian, they are now on pay-per-view television.
Wow.
Yes, the cutting edge. So you can call your cable operators for info on how to watch this show. Barbarian versus Steve Atkins.
You know what's funny about ball bearing? So, Paul Jones is out there, and he's doing commentary. And I was watching this on my iPad with headphones in, so I'm very, like, Paul Jones's words are going directly into my brain, okay? Like,
it's dangerous.
The headphones are connected to my ears, and they're going directly to my brain. This fucking guy said ball bearing every single fucking time. We're not even joking.
No.
That's how he pronounced the barbarian, ball bearing. I don't know why.
Because he's Paul Jones.
And he had a great line here.
Yes.
So first off, Steve Atkins was very lean, being an Atkins and all. He's getting his ass kicked by the ball bearing. And Paul Jones says, "We will convince people that ball bearing and the Warlord, they will prove that they are the strongest in this bench press contest." He says, "I'm not going to say which one, but one of these 2 men can bench press 700 pounds. And we all know that the Road Warriors, they can also bench press 700 pounds, 350 pounds apiece." I howled.
That was awesome.
What was funny about it, though, was his delivery was so bad, he just fucked up the comedy, but it made it funnier to me. Everyone else probably thought he sucked at his job. I thought it made him better.
So Atkins sucked, took 7 steps to run across the ring at one point, and the ball bearing pinned him with a diving headbutt. Do we mention the fans chanting Puddinhead Jones? Because they did.
Loved it.
Had a Ric Flair promo cut on some other show and just injected here. He was very subdued by Ric Flair standards. Said he and Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson were all great, and they knew a lot of people didn't like them, but that's okay. They liked each other. Said they gave Lex Luger a chance to run with them. He could not make it alongside the Elite. I swear to God, Ric Flair said about Lex Luger, I'm sure he's a nice guy.
He did.
He is a nice guy because they hung out for a while. He's a great athlete with a great physique. He's just not Horseman material. And they started calling out Michael Hayes, said he was a young lad.
A young lad struggling to make it to where Ric Flair's been his entire career.
And I laughed and I thought, wait, he was not even 30 years old here, Michael Hayes.
He was a young lad.
He was a young lad.
I just never pictured Ric Flair calling him a young lad.
It did sound funny coming from him. Ron Simmons versus David Isley was an absolute thing of beauty, and I will not listen to anyone who does not agree.
You can talk about the match. I want to talk about the promo.
I'll talk about the match. So Ron Simmons is actually a bunch of jacked up hosses in the show, but Ron Simmons is a big, scary guy. College football star, just a pile of explosive muscle, fast twitch fiber, and beef. And he's just clubbering this guy. And David Isley's got a body like a marshmallow, and he's just... I don't know what got into David Isley this week, but he said, listen, I'll sell for this Ron Simmons guy. I'll make his stuff look good, but he's going to have to take some of my stuff too. And he, throughout this match, would just fire out with knees or elbows or punches. And when I say Ron Simmons would no-sell them, he would not acknowledge them in any way. In Ron Simmons' world, this offense did not exist. He didn't shrug them off. He didn't fire up and look at Isley sternly. He just pretended they weren't there and went about his business. And Isley keeps on firing back. It's adorable. It is adorable how he thinks he can hurt Ron Simmons. And finally, he throws him into the ropes, and Simmons is running at him. Isley goes to throw a back elbow, and Ron Simmons just runs through him, doesn't even slow down, just obliterates him like a train. And then Simmons grabs him. Ron Simmons then hit a wrestling move I don't think I've ever seen before, and I don't think I've ever seen since. He gets behind Isley, grabs him around the waist to kind of the pelvis, really, and he does a slingshot wheelbarrow suplex. And he lifts the guy up, drops him across the ropes, hurls him backwards over his head, and pins him. Glorious. That was awesome.
Then they go to David Crockett. David Crockett's got a question for Ron Simmons, and that question is, Ron, do you believe that 1988 will be your year? Fucking hell of a question. Ron Simmons says, I'm sick of holding back. I'm going to speak my piece. This Ric Flair keeps coming out and bragging about all the awesome things he's had in his life. I never came from a rich family. And when my mama passed away, she instilled in me one thing, and that was a desire to fight. I'm going to make history, and I'm going to become the first ever black heavyweight champion. They cut to David, and he says, I believe you can do it. And Ron Simmons says, I will!
That's right.
This was a fucking great promo.
And eventually, if you ignore the titles they ignore, he did.
He did!
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's another one of those things where, Ron Simmons' WCW title reign was not like, it is not looked back upon as one of the great WCW title reigns in history. But it's very much like when before Ron Garvin won the title, 2 years earlier, when he's out there just smashing the shit out of jobbers and he had that awesome match with Flair, and we're like, God, why did everyone not like the Ron Garvin fucking title reign? Well, then we watched it.
Yeah.
So I will temper myself this time, but let me tell you, watching this match and listening to this promo, man, I'm all pulling for Ron Simmons to win that title.
Ron Simmons felt like a worthy title, a worthy contender for the title of best wrestler in the world here.
Sure, and eventually, a few years down the road, who knows?
Sure.
We'll follow along.
Dusty came out for a promo. He runs down Cornette for a while. Moves on to Flair, says he wants one more title run if this is his last year. Then he moves back to Cornette.
Oh my God, this promo. It was incredible.
Was it here or later when Dusty talked about his own sister?
Oh, it was here.
Here. Because Cornette was talking about Dusty's family. So Dusty says, go ahead and talk trash about my sister. She's 6'2" and 350. She'll beat your ass too.
All right, here's what he says. He talks about the $50,000 bounty that's been put on his head. He says that 1988 will be his finest year. He says, he's the U.S. champion, therefore he is in line for the world title. He says, I haven't mentioned Flair in months because Flair's got a lot going on, but Flair, you got more going on now because I'm going to go after you. And then he says, and as far as you, Jim Cornette, when I see you, I see a feminine person.
That's a quote.
He said, my buddies and I, after the matches, we go out, we get some hooch, and we chase the women. But man, when Jim Cornette goes out with the boys, I'd hate to see what happens. Everyone in that crowd howls, thinking what's happening here. He says, yeah, my sister, she's 6'2" and 250 pounds, and quote, she'll jerk your neck off and put her foot down your throat because I'm the bull of the woods. I'm going to win the Stampede. It's going to be my year. And he says, Cornette, you can ask my mom what to do with your bra when you get your clothes stripped off. And he storms off stage. This was a fucking... let me temper that. This would not fly in 2018. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
But like delivery-wise, this was awesome.
I also like, earlier they said the winner of the Buckhouse Stampede would get $1 million, and here Dusty said he was going to win the Stampede and win $500,000. Maybe he's accounting for taxes.
Well, maybe that, or I don't know.
It's a Dusty promo.
Yeah, who knows?
His delivery was awesome. You know, as we go back over the show, and I'm going over my notes
This
here,
show was amazing.
This is a very, very, very good television show, which brings me to Larry Zbyszko versus Cougar J.
And by the way, we're nowhere near the peak yet.
No, we're not even halfway through. So Larry Zbyszko, almost exactly 1 year after this, would be the World Heavyweight Champion in the American Wrestling Association. I promise you, he had a better performance on this night than he did when he won the title. Larry Zbyszko and Cougar J. First of all, Larry, doing nothing, comes out and he already has the most heat of any heel in the entire roster. The fans are chanting for Barry. We want Barry. And so Larry's taunting them, I want him too. He was out here earlier. Why isn't he out here now? He goes over to the announcers. Where's Barry Windham? I want Barry Windham too, just like all these stupid people. And he stalls, and he stalls, and he stalls, and he stalls forever. But the crowd's going crazy and crazy and crazier the longer he stalls.
They're chanting, Zbyszko is a wimp.
Zbyszko is a wimp. Zbyszko is a wimp.
And there literally is a point when he's stalling where he tries one spot and it gets reversed. Like the very first time they touch.
This is the key. This is the key.
Yes.
Eventually, the heat finally starts to die down. And so Larry, they finally start wrestling, and Larry gives Cougar J offense, and the crowd fires up again.
Yes. He does one spot, Cougar J reverses it, and Larry Zbyszko actually screams at the top of his lungs, these people are getting to me!
Yes! So they just keep chanting, we want Barry, Zbyszko is a wimp. So this all, I'm sure, went much longer than they had planned. And finally, it's time to go home. And so Larry walks up to Cougar J, gives him the karate kick in the gut, hits a neck breaker, and pins him.
Oh, yeah.
I cried. I cried with joy.
It's fucking Cougar J, so like, it's a spinning neck breaker, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the shake, rattle, and roll, except no shake and rattle. He just grabs his neck and rolls.
Yes.
Fucking Cougar J, like, I don't know what's going on, but
it didn't go well.
He doesn't go, and so his neck gets just bent in half, and then he bumps. It actually looked like he broke his neck.
Yeah.
Listen, we've only watched Larry on this particular show for like a couple months now. He's fucking amazing. Do you understand? Okay? I know he stalled a lot, but he is a fantastic wrestler. And he got so much heat from these people. It was
so
incredible.
much reaction for so little work and zero risk. Nobody got hurt in this match except Cougar J because he fucked up his own neck breaker. And then Larry cuts a promo. I did not write it all down because I was still writing about the match, but his promo was great.
He basically says the fans are annoying.
He's got no more time to waste on these fools, he says.
Yes, I've been calling out Barry. I want Barry. I have no idea where he's at, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to get him at the Nassau Coliseum. I'm going to take him in that ring. I'm going to teach him a wrestling lesson. And I will treat him like a stepping stone to another title.
January 24th at the Nassau Coliseum. I'm in your office digging through your paperwork for your cable bill, trying to order this pay-per-view. Larry was the man here. Do you hear me? Larry Zbyszko was the man.
Still not the best thing on the show, Vinny.
Lightning Express versus Trent Knight and Bob Riddle.
Sucked. Technically solid, technically boring. Anything else?
Larry had the crowd so fired up, they actually ended this for a while. It did not end. They fucked up a spot where Riddle, who I don't think is Matt Riddle's dad, but he thought Horner was going to do a reverse atomic drop, so he just jumped straight up in the air. But then Horner didn't do anything, so he just landed on his feet, and then Horner punched him. At least the jobber looked like a geek. The Lightning Express blatantly ripping off spots from the Rock and Roll Express, who were on the show later, so that was weird. And then eventually they won when Armstrong lifted Horner and dropped his leg across Knight's face, and they pinned him. We had a special guest on the show.
Oh, man, I loved this segment. I loved it.
This was awesome. Bill Apter in his comb over there. Not bald, mind you, because I'm used to seeing Bill Apter just bald. The comb over was actually an improvement, if you think about that. He is there to present the winners in this territory of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated 1987 Year-End Awards with their plaques. So the first one, which by the end was the best one, they should have saved this for last. Nikita Koloff has won the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year. And Nikita comes out. He thanks all the fans. He thanks Dusty Rhodes for his friendship and giving him a chance. And he has to call out the most important man. And he calls out Magnum TA. And Magnum comes out. And they embrace. And Nikita calls him Terry. Says he is why this is all possible. Dedicates the award to him. Nikita Koloff, the Russian nightmare, fighting back tears. As he embraces Magnum TA and thanks him for this award.
Magnum's got this big, thick jacket on. He's walking, but, I mean, you can just tell that he's just lost a ton of weight. His arm doesn't work at all.
When he first got hurt, even like 3 months later, they were talking about when he gets back in the ring. And by now, I think everyone knew that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but he cut a great promo here, too, about how, when Dusty first started hanging out with Nikita, people warned them, you can't trust this Nikita Koloff. But he'd sat back, he'd watched Nikita over the past year. Nikita Koloff exemplifies everything that is the best in pro wrestling. And I hope he wins this award again next year. This was so awesome.
It's unbelievable. They left together. It was just so great. And it's a fucking fake award.
Yeah. So
they made people cry over a fake award and what they did surrounding it.
Dusty Rhodes then is most popular wrestler in 1987.
So Dusty Rhodes wins the most popular wrestler, is voted by 15,000 fans in Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Mm-hmm. So because he won, he comes out and he says, Pro Wrestling Illustrated is the biggest magazine in the entire world. Not a wrestling magazine.
No.
It's bigger than Time. It's bigger than People magazine.
Yeah.
It's the biggest magazine in the entire world. And it has voted him the most popular wrestler. And he cut an awesome, fiery promo about how this is the NWA. It's real wrestling.
There's no cartoons out here.
No, he was awesome.
There's no copycats. Real pro wrestling here in Jim Crockett Promotions. And then, this is not the best.
This aside from Magnum, this was my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. This was not the best, but it may have been my favorite. By the way, just a quick note on the how you mentioned these are fake awards. Dusty Rhodes won Most Popular Wrestler of the Year the same year Hogan beat Andre in the Silverdome.
Yes.
I'm skeptical.
Yes.
Regardless, we move on, and the next award is for the Most Hated Wrestler of the Year.
Yes.
They're actually going to present this plaque. It's made. They're going to say to a man, no one is more hated than you. Everyone hates you. Here's an award to commemorate that fact. But the winner of this award, Ric Flair, cannot be there that week. So Jim Crockett has to come out and accept the award for most hated wrestler on Ric Flair's behalf. So he has to explain, well, if you're a hated man, you have a lot of enemies. And when you're a successful man, you have a lot of enemies. And this award, I think, represents how Ric Flair is the greatest champion in the world.
I'll read it.
Okay.
He says, success breeds enemies. Ric Flair is the most hated, but he is also the most successful. And in my opinion, he is the greatest champion that wrestling has ever seen. And he walks away.
Yes.
I loved it.
It was so awesome. And finally, the award for Tag Team of the Year goes to not the Four Horsemen or the Rock and Roll Express, who were world champions in 87, not the Road Warriors, who were the big main event draws. No, the best Tag Team of the Year goes to your United States Tag Team Champions, the Midnight Express. And they're very, very happy about this. Bobby Eaton kisses Bill Apter. And Cornette has had his time on the show, and so he basically yields his time to Stan here. And Stan says they need to dedicate this award to two very important people, and those people are beautiful Bobby and sweet Stan. What took you fans so long to figure this out? And that was it.
I was furious that history was not rewritten here to give the award to the Rock and Roll Express to promote my match with Filthy Tom and the Rock and Rolls, July 14th, Crown Point, Indiana. BlackLabelPro.ticketleap.com for ticket information.
Warlord versus Larry Stevens.
2 words.
Yes. Not the Warlord, not even Warlord. First name War, last name Lord. Mr. Lord and his wife Mrs. Lord had a baby, and they named him War.
I can believe that.
So, as we all know, Warlord was not a very good pro wrestler, but he was very, very strong, and he did one of the best press slams I ever saw here. He presses Larry Stevens over his head, and then honestly threw him through the air, and Stevens goes crashing down onto his side. And Warlord went on to win with a running power slam, which, as you noted, would be a better finisher for Braun Strowman than the standing power slam. We had Lex Luger at an arena somewhere. He beat Curtis Thompson in a minute with a torture rack.
They had the announcers screaming that he could end up the greatest wrestler of all time. And, I mean, he wasn't gonna be, but, man, that guy had an upside.
He sure did.
He had an upside.
You can't blame them for trying.
No, you can't.
No. And he got a promo saying the Horsemen are on the top of the world, but you are on top. There's only one way to go. And he's going to kick them off the edge one at a time. Dick Murdoch versus Rick Nelson. So Jim Cornette, when he was out here earlier, had mentioned he had a surprise later in the show. And here it was, as Jim Cornette is now Dick Murdoch's manager. This is not as exciting as last week's Murdoch squash. He beat this guy for 2 minutes and won with a brainbuster. But then they cut a promo.
Well, before the promo, first off, it wasn't as exciting as last week, but there was actually a spot where Murdoch throws this dude outside, grabs Cornette's rack, and starts beating the shit out of him. And Teddy Long does not call for a DQ. Instead, referee Teddy Long says, and I quote, "Dick, you should know better." That's what he said.
Well, there's our next shirt.
And then Dick hits the brainbuster for the pin, and I love that they showed a replay, which actually illustrated how safe the brainbuster was.
Yeah.
So
then, within 2 feet of the mat. So they go to cut their promo.
Fucking promo.
So
for the third time, I'm inducting Dick Murdoch into the Hall of Awesome.
He was not alone out here. Jim Cornette starts. And he says, now earlier on this show, I was talking about Dusty Rhodes, and y'all heard me running down rednecks. You're wondering how I could be out here with Dick Murdoch, Captain Redneck. Well, let me tell you. This is Captain Redneck. He's a society redneck. He's got fertilizer on his boots, but that fertilizer came from 7 straight Kentucky Derby winners. He's got a pickup truck, but it's big and shiny and clean and chrome. And when I climbed into that truck, he didn't play Willie Nelson or Waylon Jennings. He played, who was it, Dick? And Dick says, George Jones. George Jones, Cornette says. And Cornette's a big George Jones fan this week. He promises Dick Murdoch's going to beat Dusty Rhodes in that cage in Lakeland, Florida on the 24th.
Allow me to speak upon Dick. Dick Murdoch is furious that Dusty has won the most popular wrestler award. He says, I've seen the kind of people that love Dusty Rhodes. It makes me want to vomit.
He put his finger
in his mouth.
Yeah.
He says, Dusty talks about everyone talks big, but he should know better than anybody. Dusty should know better than anybody that when Dick Murdoch says he's going to do something, he does it. He says, we were partners forever. We were partners for years. We were the best tag team in the world. Maybe we're still the best tag team of all time. Nobody does a better job than Dick Murdoch. When I go out, he says, I don't drink a little hooch. I drink a lot of hooch. And I, Dusty, not you, I was always the first guy in those brawls. I was always the first guy to go after that dude on the motorcycle. I'm going to be the guy that's going to take you out in that cage match. He's fucking beat red. He's pouring down sweat. He died at 49 of a heart attack. I mean, you can't help but think of that when you watch this promo. His blood pressure is just, it's boiling over. This fucking promo, I was dying to see these guys in the cage match. How is this guy not in the Observer Hall of Fame? What's going on here?
I don't know. But he talked about all this money Cornette had promised him. He says, I'm going to be a very rich man. I'm going to drink a lot of hooch. I'm going to two-step with a lot of women. It was great. It was just great. Road Warriors versus Nate Bolin and Dale LaPerouse. I can only assume Nate Bolin is Kenny Bolin's brother or something. So this, of course, went 30 seconds. And Dale LaPerouse was his usual awkward, gangly self. And he's running the ropes. And it's like he was CGI, but a different guy animated every part of his body. So his legs don't line up with each other, and his arms are all out of control, and his neck's going back and forth. And Animal just clotheslines his fool head off. And LaPerouse is left ass over tea kettle, planted into the mat. He killed that guy, Crockett notes, and chuckles, and they pinned him. Just with a lariat. Just with a lariat. And then they cut a promo. Animal says, we've been bench pressing in the gym. We've been bench pressing in the ring. We have built our reputation on being the strongest men in wrestling, and everyone in Greensboro is going to see that for themselves. And then Hawk went.
Oh, my God.
Hawk
Did you write this down?
As much as I could.
Okay.
Hawk explains there's a lot of sports writers out there calling them soft. A lot of critics have said they've gone soft. Well, nothing about this is soft, and he does a most muscular pose. Nothing about this is soft, and Animal flexes his biceps. He says there's only one part of our bodies that's soft, and it's not soft all the time.
If you know what I mean.
If you know what I mean.
And then...
No, they couldn't leave that alone. He had to direct... That was merely a setup for his next his next comment.
Immediately after talking about his cock, he then says, and keep in mind the line was, there's only one part of our body that's soft, and it's not always soft.
It's not
if
soft
you know
all
what
the
I
time.
mean.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to give Ric Flair a really hard time the next time we see him.
Yes.
I was like, you talked about your dick and you threatened to rape Ric Flair. What the fuck's going on here?
They're going to break his back and make him humble. I can only assume.
Dude.
So, you buy that pay-per-view, folks, to see Hawk sodomize Ric Flair. And finally, Paul Ellering says that he's heard Paul Jones running his mouth about how his men are bigger and badder than the Road Warriors. Well, in Hawaii on January 20th and in LA on January 21st, my men are going to face your men. And if you're feeling froggy, Paul Jones, I dare you to stick your nose in there too. The greatest tag team of all time came out for a promo. Ricky Morton's out there. Now it was January. Maybe there's a cold snap in Atlanta. Ricky Morton's wearing a full-length fur coat.
Dude, a full-length brown fur coat.
The funniest part was it was just him. Gibson was his usual self.
Yeah,
like
Gibson's just standing there.
Jeans, a t-shirt, maybe a windbreaker. So, of course, Ricky did all the talking. Injuries can happen in any sport. There's been a lot of injuries in this bunkhouse stampede. He says, the doctors want to cut my legs. And it took me a minute to figure out what he meant there.
Surgery.
I thought he meant like amputation.
Yeah. It was a rough stampede.
That sounds bad. No, he meant surgery, but he was telling those doctors, no. He's got to compete for the fans. He says they're 5-time champions. Says they're going to win the Crockett Cup. He calls out the Sheepherders for jumping them from behind. Calls out Blanchard and Anderson because they're tag team champs. And that's that. Sheepherders versus Mike Jackson and Italian Stallion.
Oh, man.
This could have been a really good wrestling match. This could have been a really good squash. Instead, it went 2 minutes, and the Sheepherders won with a gutbuster.
Okay, so that's bad, but listen, I was upset that the match was so quick, but they gave time for these Sheepherders to close the show with a promo. And I must, Vinny, I must do this promo. I must recap it, and there's a reason why. The Sheepherders vow that 1988 will be the year of the Sheepherders, and they're going to take everybody down. They say they hate rock and roll. They hate the Express because they hate rock and roll, and they hate them for being bloody Yanks. And then they turn and they say, right, Johnny Ace? Fucking howled. They hate long-haired punk rockers. They say they haven't even started.
Pardon me. They hate rock and roll. They hate bloody Yanks. They hate long hair, and they hate punk rock.
Yes.
Yes.
They haven't even started with the rock and rolls. They vow to break every bone in their Yankee bloody bodies. They suggest they toss their gear away, cut their hair, go get another job, save their bodies from looking like a dried-out octopus with broken tentacles, which, by the way, only the Sheepherders could pull off that line.
A dried-out octopus with broken tentacles. That's exactly what he said.
They knew they blew out Ricky's knee. They knew they gave Robert internal injuries. And the rock and rolls need to surrender to the Sheepherders and just admit that the New Zealand flag is the real red, white, and blue. Now, I can't even begin to do justice to the delivery of the Sheepherders in this promo. It was a fucking work of art. If they weren't already in the Hall of Awesome, they'd be in. They fucking ruined our match with the rock and rolls. I will never be able to live up to this promo here. I was so furious when this was over. That's the match I want to see. Fuck me and Tom. I don't give a shit about that match. I've got to see the Sheepherders versus the Rock and Roll Express. This sounds like the greatest tag team match in the history of mankind.
The only thing I can add to this is that at one point, while the Sheepherders were ranting about bloody Yanks and how great New Zealand is, Johnny Ace is behind them, and as we note, he never does anything. He's just there. But when they started talking about New Zealand, Johnny takes the flag, and usually, he's just got the flag pole and he waves it back and forth. He takes the flag, one corner in his right hand, the other corner in his left. He holds it high up above his own face. So now all you see is the Sheepherders and the New Zealand flag behind them. And they're ranting and raving and carrying on. And then Johnny lowers the flag so just his eyes are peeking out over it. His nose and mouth are still covered, but he's looking at you. He was awesome here, just doing that.
They were all great.
This was great.
Hey, you know what? Listen.
And then... Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Well, I just want to say very quickly about them and about Dick Murdoch. Dick Murdoch is not in the Observer Hall of Fame. Obviously, the Sheepherders are not in the Observer Hall of Fame.
Really?
I'm not even going to really argue that they should be in the Hall of Fame. I will argue actually about Dick Murdoch, but not so much about the Sheepherders because, they did become the Bushwhackers and they weren't the Sheepherders when they became the Bushwhackers. But I mean, all I got to say is that I haven't watched all of the wrestling in this world, and there's a lot of territories we haven't really delved into. I'm sure we will over the next 20 years or whatever. There's a lot of different things in the WWE Network. But I have to say that I have watched a lot of wrestling. I've watched a lot of wrestling all over the world. I've watched a lot of wrestling in different eras. I've watched a lot of wrestling in different territories. And honest to God, Dick Murdoch is one of the best promos I've ever heard in my lifetime. Do you understand?
He's unbelievable.
He's that good. And say what you will about the Bushwhackers and everything else. As promos, I mean, there are not a lot of tag teams that I've seen in my lifetime that have been better promos than the Sheepherders. This was not an aberration here. Every time they cut a promo, it's fucking awesome. They are really, really fucking great.
So they go on this tirade, and it's awesome, and it's wonderful, and it's glorious. And then they cut to a wide shot. Now, there's been a microphone on screen the entire time, and a phantom arm holding the microphone. So we've known Tony Schiavone was there, but we could only see him from, the elbow down. They cut to a wide shot. Tony's standing there. His one arm is out holding the mic. His other arm is just in his pants pocket. He is looking... he's not bored, but he is a guy who has seen a million crazy wrestlers do a million crazy promos, and for him, it's just another day at work. He's just part of his job is dealing with these lunatics every single time. And so they finish, and they leave, and the camera zooms in on him, and he does a quick little note saying, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all for watching Jim Crockett Promotions. We are the Major League of Professional Wrestling. Please tune in again next week. And the credits roll. And it's just 30 seconds, and I was just so happy when it was done. Wrestling used to be fun and happy.
Hey.
This is a Saturday afternoon show.
Yes.
And the Saturday afternoon show ended. It went on a high note. Everyone had a ball, and they went on with the rest of their weekend. It was so fun.
Hey, listen, like Dave said on the show, I don't know what day it was, a week ago or so, when we were talking about the new WWE, they're doing 4-hour pay-per-views. Every pay-per-view is being moved up, and now it's Sunday afternoon at 4 for every show. And here on the West Coast, 4 o'clock. Everybody else, 7 o'clock or whatever. But and he noted, like, back in the day, no matter where I was on Saturday, I could be at the beach, I could be on a date, I could be out with my friends. I had to leave whatever I was doing and be at my house at 3:05 in order to watch the show. Because it was 3:05 on the West Coast. And he wasn't missing his wrestling. But you got to remember, if you don't like Raw and SmackDown, or you think it's too long, or you're bored by it, who gives a fuck? Get on the WWE Network and make it weekly viewing to watch NWA World Championship Wrestling. Start wherever they were at the beginning and just go through every week for 3 years. And you know what? When it's over, you can start over again if you want to. It's not like I wouldn't watch this show again. This was one of my favorite TV shows I've watched in 2018.
Yeah.
It was, and last week was also awesome.
I'll be honest, I did not quite realize that watching it. I knew there was some good stuff in the show, but I didn't quite realize how stacked it was top to bottom. And we went over here, and I was like, hey, this is fun. Hey, this is fun. Hey, this was fun. Hey, this was fun. This show was awesome.
Yeah, I knew when it was over because I watched that Sheepherders thing over and over again. The Dick Murdoch thing, like Dusty's promo. There were so many good, it wasn't like a lot of good wrestling, but there were so many good promos on this show. It was just so great. And sadly, now we go back to Nitro on Tuesday. There'll be Retro Raw Nitro from 19 years ago this week. Myself, Vinny, and Craig back in the studio, ready to go, so that'll be next. Later on tonight, I'll be back with Dave talking the Mauro Ranallo documentary, which if you've not seen, I recommend you watch it. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long. It is on Showtime, and Showtime has a 7-day free trial at the moment, so I got the free trial and I watched it, and it was great. So check that out, and we'll also be talking UFC and a lot of news and more. And that is it. We'll talk to you again after a while.
Adios.